Hey guys, welcome back to the Crosley 307TA restoration project. When we left off, we got the set somewhat working, and I had said I wanted to start getting inside this high voltage box, so I just undid the screws all around it and put it off to the side because the high voltage lead runs through it. I'd rather not unsolder that end connector if I don't have to. When you work on these early RCAs, be careful because that high voltage box actually supports some of these components. So just leave them sitting here carefully. So that's one guy we definitely want to replace. Otherwise, I think we just need to do some cleaning. So that is a power resistor. It looks gigantic, but I believe it's rated for 25 watts in the service info. And honestly, I think probably 15 would be enough. However, the size of it is about what a 50 watter is these days. So let's see what I've got on hand. I think I might have something we can use. Yeah, it's not my first time working on sets like this, so I picked up a few of these guys. It's a 50 watter 7500 ohm, and it is the same length, which means we can reuse the mounting hardware. I got to look up the service info. It says multiple taps, but typically it uses the middle one, which I think is around 6300 ohms. So what we need to do is parallel this up with a resistor to knock it down. Now that will be much lower wattage because wattage divides evenly with the ratio of resistance. So I think something like a 47K, say 5 watt resistor would get us in the ballpark. I'll have to do a little bit of math on that. Well, this is a little confusing. The resistors are here. In the schematics, it's 5300, then 500, then 500. R1, 2, 3. If you look on the parts list, R1, 2, 3, they have a 6300 ohm, 20 watt. So are they saying it's 5300 at the lowest tap, and then 500 and 500, and the total is 6300? That's how I'm interpreting that. So the middle tap would be 6300 minus 500, was that 5800? So we got to figure out how to turn this 7500 ohm resistor into a 5800 ohm resistor. For those of you playing along at home, 27K. 27K is the magic value. Actually, technically 26K, but that's not really a standard value, but 27K is. So I believe this is a 5 watt resistor, so I can put this in parallel with it. Now I also do have a couple 7.5K 25 watt resistor, which is it still exceeds the 20 watt rating on that, and not only is it smaller, but it costs considerably less. You might imagine these are not cheap, so I could use that. Also have a 22K resistor that is definitely rated for 5 watts. So I have a few things I can play around with. The other issue with using this big guy is if I wanted to put this in parallel with it, the leads are not quite long enough to span the difference. Now, yeah, it has a tap, so potentially one of the other two taps might be used, but I'm figuring since they're using the middle tap when it was made and all the years it was used, I'm probably safe going with that. Well, I decided to go with the short guy, at least for testing. After all, the original was rated for 20. This combo is rated for 30 watts. So it should be well within spec. And I think they should have overrated this considerably. If they used a 20 watt resistor, it should dissipate 10 or less watts. So let's see how it works. Cleaned up everything. Let's put the cage back together. And I do have some electrolytics to replace, so we got a little bit more work to do before we can power this setup again. I'm working topside right now, getting ready to drop in the last rebuilt capacitor. Now a couple of these, this guy and this guy, were twist locks. You can see the tabs there. I decided to use an adapter cap, so I did have to drill a couple holes. It's going to mount in like so. Part of my reason for doing this is the wiring in these really early sets is cloth covered, with, I believe it's called gutta percha on the inside, which is a natural rubber type substance that gets rock hard over time. You flex these wires, it starts cracking and failing. We want to move the wires as little as possible. So you can see the connections to the cap are right there. I just cut the lugs off the old cap. This has nice big pads down below. I'm going to drop this down and then just tack those ends of those wires onto those pads. Just barely moving those wires. Also doing some cleaning. And just removed a big box that was around this so I can do some cleaning and get some dust bunnies out of there. And I thought you guys might be wondering, what are these things? What are these three gigantic things on top of the chassis? You don't, most chassis don't have something like this. These are not the IF transformers with a primary and a secondary and tunable slugs like you might think. No, these are resonant traps. This is actually the winding. There's not a primary and a secondary, that's the winding. And then there is a cap tacked on the outside. You can see it here, and one over there. And this is a tunable slug. They are there to reject sharply certain frequencies. Like there's a sound trap to keep the FM sound carrier out of the video, IF. And there are traps to on either side of the IF response to keep adjacent channels from bleeding in. So say you're in your area, you had channels 3 and 4. You don't, and there's 6 megahertz wide, and there's not really any spacing between the two. So the concern was that some of the carrier might bleed over. These days we don't have broadcast. You're probably just going to be hard wiring a modulator to this. It's not an issue at all. That's what they are. And a common problem with these is the glue breaks. So you can see what's inside. There's nothing in there. That's just a phenolic tube. Coil cap on the outside, and this is your adjustable slug. Now, because it failed, I can glue this back down. Should I worry about realigning the IF? If it was a sound trap, probably. If it's one of the adjacent channel traps, not really going to be much of an issue. And quite frankly, if it was adjusted well, if this gets rotated a little bit, it's not going to make a huge difference. But a common issue with these sets, because there's split carrier over separate IF for sound, I believe it's these guys, and video is over here, kind of going, snaking around this way. If they get misaligned, you can't tune in the best picture and the best sound at the same time. We'll see how it goes. Still haven't gotten a really good picture out of this set yet. Well, if we get there, we'll do an alignment if we need to. It's a bit involved. There's a lot of trimmers. You got all the ones you can see up here, and there are some down into the chassis. But it's very well outlined in the service manual, so I think we could manage it. Well, I finished with the electrolytic replacement and fired the set back up, and it's kind of working well. It's sound. Fine-tuning works. We have reception, and all the controls are working, basically. We have horizontal lock. But the vertical is locking sort of in the middle, instead of at the top or bottom, so we have half of the image below and half the image above, instead of being centered. So, that's a bit odd. I mean, obviously we'll go after the vertical circuit and the sync circuit. Something else I wanted to point out, if I haven't already mentioned this, is that these sets don't have AGC, and the contrast setting is super critical. So I'm just going to go a little bit counterclockwise, and then we completely lose the image. Go a little bit clockwise, gets good. If you keep going clockwise, it goes haywire. And if I keep going clockwise, it kind of blinks out and then kind of comes back. So just be aware if you have one of these sets that the contrast works a little bit different than what you might be used to. Well, an old problem has returned. Powered the set down, swapped some tubes, turned it back on. I couldn't get a signal at all anymore. Except if I tuned around a little bit, I could start picking up FM radio. I think that's what happened on our initial power-up. And try as I might, I could not get any reception back. So I thought I'd poke around a little bit under the chassis, see if it was something silly. And I stumbled across something. So I started thinking, well, I did replace a bunch of mica caps. Some of them are tacked in place, and I've been meaning to go back and and install them more neatly once I get the set working better. Check this out. One of these guys, this one, it's not the mica cap that I replaced that's got the problem. It is right next to it. Get some better light in there. So, this lug down on that coil, that's never been soldered. When I wiggle this cap, it moves that lead that's going to that coil, and it's just flopping around loose in that socket. There's a little like loop of metal on the side of that coil, and there's a wire going through it. It's never been soldered. Must have been making intermittent contact. That's a critical point. That feeds the signal through the IF. So it must have been occasionally making contact and occasionally failing. Because now when I think back, just before I started filming, when I had that circle test pattern, I was also getting no reception, and then it just suddenly started working, and I was thinking, okay, just need to warm up longer. But no, I think it's that connection of intermittent contact. So let's get that soldered more securely, and then we can proceed to do troubleshooting more systematically. This original RCA service info is really detailed, including voltage charts and screens representing problems. Now, they don't have a problem with the vertical issue we're seeing, but they do also include theory of operation and a bunch of waveforms. Somewhere in here. There we go. Really nice scope waveforms. So we have no excuses for not troubleshooting this. I mean, this is a treat. It's far more than you usually get. And we have voltage chart we can go through on every single tube. So assuming I can get this reestablished to get reception, and we still have that vertical problem, first thing I'm going to do is inject a signal right into the first video amp. And if the problem is still there, then we know it's in the sync circuitry somewhere. If it's not there, then the problem might be in the IF somewhere. Dang, the problem is still there, but you just saw it flickered. And when I turned the set on, the test pattern was there for a while, and it disappeared. So I flashed again. It was definitely something intermittent. And there's the radio station back. Well, this stinks. I got to thinking I'm getting such weird results, maybe I should once again start questioning my signal source. Right now, I fired up my scope, and I'm looking at the output of the TVA92, the companion piece. And we should be looking at a video signal on the scope. And it's a clipped sine wave. And it does not change with the test pattern. It varies the level a little bit, but what first got me is the output level here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that is supposed to show you the output level of your signal. And I'm on the range where it can go up to 30 volts peak to peak. And I got it max and it's only showing 17.5. But regardless, it should be a composite video signal, and it most definitely is not. So now I'm wondering, is the top unit even working right? So I'm going to hook up an over-the-air converter box and feed it into this set, and maybe it's actually working fine. Alright, back to just a plain old cheapo over-the-air converter box plugged into the antenna inputs. Let's see, it's on channel 4. Ah, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Great. Am I looking at more test equipment that's gone on the fritz? Okay, we still do have the vertical fold over problem. So I think these intermittent issues I've seen with the picture coming and going is actually my test pattern generator crapping out. Damn. Sound too.
So, Commander. Ensign, would you like to join me? Thank you.
That's a little fuzzy as always because of the focus coil messing up the touch CRT. So when I adjust the vertical hold,
The hostage situation.
it seems like it feels like if I could turn it a little bit more to the right, it would lock. So these usually work on like an RC. Well, it could be a blocking transformer or an RC time constant. I hope it's an RC time constant, which could just be the resistor or capacitor or out of whack. If it's a coil, a transformer, well, regardless, it's very close to working, right? Oh man. I'm glad I didn't waste too much time troubleshooting. Jeez. Alright, here's the vertical oscillator circuit, and it really ticks me that RCHOs use just a single triode 6J5. Because the audiophiles gobble them up because they're pure triodes and they can use them in their mono block preamps or whatever, so they've gotten a bit a little scarce, a little expensive, hard to find. Everybody else in the world would use 1/2 of a 6SN7 or a 12SN7 or something like that. If it's that, I'll have to go digging for some spares. But this does use looks like a blocking transformer for the oscillator, which means that it's really unlikely that that would throw the frequency off. If it was open or something would be oscillating at all, it wouldn't be slightly off frequency. Could be the 4700 picofarad. Probably a mica. I can check the resistors too. But not too much to it. Should be able to figure it out. It's 6J5 is in one of the most inaccessible places in the chassis, of course. I checked the resistors in the area. They're pretty much all dead on. So I went for the one cap, the 4700 picofarad. What appears to be mica, I can't really tell because I can barely even see the thing. But it's leaky, just 100 volts. So, and if I try to measure the capacitance on the bridge, it really doesn't register anything. So that's got to get replaced, and not going to be easy to do by any means, but I'll get in there. I'll get in there one way or another. Well, I got in there. Here's the cap that was in there. I recall reading that if it's a white dot in the upper left-hand corner, that can indicate paper. I mean, it's 47 red for 4700 picofarad. It's not a mica mold though. It's a Aerovox, but well, I'm suspicious that might be paper inside. Anyways, we're back up. We're rolling. A horrible buzz too, which is kind of annoying, but can we adjust the vertical hold? I think we can. I think we can. So the brightness all the way up. Part of that too is this test CRT. If I move it around, it's considerably brighter. But I think we've just about licked it. Gotta do some work on that sound buzz, but otherwise, yeah. All right. Just bummed about my test pattern generator, but glad that we're making progress with this set. Well, I went through and checked the IF tubes and found a couple marginal 6AG5s, replaced those, played around with the controls a bit more, and got it playing quite well. Vertical linearity is off a bit, but I don't have a test pattern generator, so it's hard for me to adjust linearity right now. And we have the audio buzz. This is what I mean about adjusting it for the best picture and sound. The picture, I think, is a little bit better here, and the sound is shot. But if we go to where the sound is the best, the picture's not as good. So we probably will be doing an alignment at some point. You may be wondering about that power resistor. It works. It is getting a little warmer than I would like, though, so I am going to go with the big 50 watt guy. I'll worry about that once I figure out what's going on with the sound buzz, but I'm going to wrap it up for this installment. Hopefully the next will be the final installment when I figure out the sound and we put this all back together. Meanwhile, I need to figure out what to do about that. I do have a backup pattern generator. You'll probably be seeing it in another video shortly. It's a little bit different, but I'm really bummed because I can't use the 92 without the 91 because they plug in together, and this is a really useful, versatile device. So, yeah, we'll be cracking that open at some point, but after I get some more projects done. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.